The interstellar station Karen Gate never slept. Ships arrived every minute, engines glowing softly as they locked into the massive ring. Species from hundreds of worlds crossed the long halls, speaking in dozens of languages. For most beings, the station was a place of trade, contracts, and quiet survival. For Lyra, it was the place where her life changed. She stood in front of a tall desk made of polished black metal. Behind it floated a council clerk from the viral species, its eyes glowing faint blue. The clerk barely looked at her. Its attention stayed on the glowing screen in front of it. "State your complaint," the clerk said in a flat tone. Lyra swallowed. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to speak clearly. "My name is Lyra of the Cathari," she said. "I am filing a formal complaint against the Station Security Division and the Trade Authority of Sector 9. That finally made the clerk look up. Its eyes moved slowly over her small frame. Cathari were known across the galaxy for being gentle, soft-spoken, and physically weak. They avoided conflict and rarely appeared in official disputes. The clerk made a low clicking sound that might have been amusement. "Reason?" it asked. Lyra took a deep breath. "I was detained without cause. My travel permits were altered, my cargo was seized, and I was threatened to remain silent." The clerk tapped one thin finger on the desk. "Do you have proof?" it asked. "Yes," Lyra said quickly. "I have time-stamps, station logs, and a witness." At the word witness, the clerk's posture changed slightly. "Name the witness." "Daniel Harper," Lyra said. "Human, Engineering Division, Dock Ring 3. The clerk froze for half a second. Then it leaned back and made another clicking sound, this time sharper. "A human," it said. "You expect us to take a complaint seriously because a human saw something." Lyra lowered her eyes, but she did not step back. "Yes," she said quietly. "He saw everything." The clerk sighed and waved a hand. "This will be reviewed," it said. "You may go." Lyra hesitated. "Will I receive a response?" The clerk's eyes dimmed slightly. "You will be contacted if necessary." She knew what that meant, probably never. Lyra turned away from the desk and walked through the crowded hall. Her heart felt heavy, but a small part of her still held hope. Humans were strange. Everyone knew that. They were new to the galactic community, but they treated rules differently. They read them. They questioned them. And sometimes they refused to ignore things others accepted. She just hoped Daniel would remember her. Daniel Harper was elbow-deep in a power relay when his wrist unit chimed. He frowned, pulling his hand free and wiping the grease on his sleeve. He was tall by station standards, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes that had seen too many broken machines and too many quiet injustices. He checked the message. Formal complaint reference, KTH 9931A. He leaned against the wall and opened the attached file. At first glance, it looked like a normal complaint. Bureaucratic language, dry wording. But Daniel had learned something important since joining interstellar service. If someone went through this much trouble to file a complaint, something was wrong. He began to read carefully. As he read, his jaw tightened. The timestamps showed security officers stopping Lyra's transport without cause. Her permits had been altered after inspection, not before. Cargo logs showed missing items labeled administrative seizure. Threat markers appeared in audio logs, coded phrases used to intimidate without leaving direct evidence. Daniel exhaled slowly. This was not an accident. He remembered Lyra clearly now. She had been standing near Dock Ring 3 cycles ago, arguing softly with two large security officers. She had looked scared, but not angry. When Daniel had walked over to fix a power flicker nearby, he had overheard everything. "Just sign," one officer had said, "or your species will lose docking privileges." Lyra had looked around, helpless. Daniel had spoken without thinking. "Is there a problem here?" The officers had turned, surprised to see a human. "No," one had said quickly. "Routine inspection." Daniel had nodded, but he stayed. Human staying was something the galaxy still didn't understand. Later that cycle, Lyra had thanked him. She had bowed slightly, her voice shaking. "I don't think they expected me to speak up," she had said. Daniel closed the file and looked around the engineering bay. This wasn't just about her. He forwarded the complaint to a private channel and began pulling additional logs. Station power usage, security movement patterns, data access records. Humans had access to systems others didn't, mostly because humans had built half of them. As the hours passed, a clear pattern formed. Sector 9 Trade Authority had been targeting weaker species, confiscating goods, altering records, silencing complaints before they reached the council. Daniel leaned back in his chair. They had made a mistake. They had done it where a human could see. Lyra sat in her assigned quarters, staring at the small window that showed the endless stars. She expected fear, but what she felt was exhaustion. Speaking up had taken everything she had. Her communicator chimed. She flinched, then picked it up. "Lyra of the Cathari," a calm voice said. "This is Daniel Harper." Her eyes widened. You received the complaint?" she asked. "I did," Daniel said. "And I need to ask you something important." She braced herself. "Are you willing to tell the truth again?" he asked. "Even if it gets uncomfortable." Lyra closed her eyes. "I already lost my cargo," she said. "I already lost my safety. If I stay silent now, it will happen to others." Daniel smiled slightly, though she couldn't see it. "That's what I hoped you'd say," he replied. Over the next cycle, Daniel worked quietly. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He documented everything. He looped in human legal observers and allied diplomats. Every message was polite. Every request followed protocol. That made it impossible to ignore. The station council began to notice increased data traffic. Security divisions received audit notifications. Trade authority accounts were flagged for review. Whispers spread through the halls. "Why is this happening?" Lyra noticed the change first when security officers stopped looking at her with cold confidence and started avoiding her eyes. One of them even stepped aside to let her pass. She didn't smile. She knew this wasn't over. Daniel stood in a council observation room, watching as the first preliminary review began. He wasn't angry. That surprised even him. He felt focused, calm. Humans had a word for this feeling: resolve. The galaxy had many rules. But there were a few things humans didn't negotiate. Silencing the innocent was one of them. And somewhere in the vast station, the people who thought they could quietly erase a small alien girl were beginning to understand something important. They hadn't messed with her strength. They had messed with the wrong part of humanity. The change on Karen Gate was slow, but it was real. Lyra felt it every time she walked through the station corridors. Conversations stopped when she passed. Security officers no longer stood too close. Some looked nervous. Others looked angry but careful. She had become visible. That frightened her more than being ignored. Daniel Harper noticed it too. From the engineering wing, he watched the station react like a living thing trying to hide a wound. Every system check he requested was approved faster than before. Every data log he asked for came back complete. Too complete. Someone was trying to look innocent. Daniel sat in front of 3 floating screens, eyes scanning lines of information. His jaw tightened as patterns became clearer. Missing cargo reports matched private account transfers. Security patrol routes avoided certain docks during specific hours. Complaints from non-human species vanished at the same checkpoints. "This is organized," he muttered. He opened a secure channel. "Human oversight, this is Harper," he said. "I'm escalating." The reply came quickly. "Send everything." Daniel hesitated for half a second, then sent the full data packet. Once it was out, there was no going back. On the other side of the station, the Sector 9 Trade Authority held an emergency closed meeting. The room was filled with tall figures, sharp voices, and controlled anger. "A human engineer," one of them hissed. "Since when do engineers start investigations?" "He has access," another replied. "Too much access." A third voice cut in, cold and calm. "Then remove the witness." The room went silent. Quietly, the voice continued. No force, no noise make the complaint disappear. Lyra was in the public archive when it happened. She was reviewing her own documents, making sure nothing had changed. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. She sensed movement behind her. Lyra of the Cathari, a smooth voice said, "Please come with us." She turned slowly. Two station officials stood there wearing neutral authority badges. Their smiles did not reach their eyes. "There is a problem with your complaint file," one said. "A clerical error." Her heart pounded. "I was told not to alter anything," she replied. "Of course," the other said gently. "This will only take a moment." Lyra looked around. No one met her eyes. Then she remembered Daniel's words. "Are you willing to tell the truth again?" "I will contact my listed witness," she said. The smiles vanished. "That won't be necessary," one official said, stepping closer. The station lights flickered. Every screen in the archive froze. A calm human voice echoed through the room. "It actually will be necessary." Daniel stood at the entrance, flanked by two human legal observers and a station auditor from a neutral species. His expression was controlled, but his eyes were sharp. "Step away from her," he said. The officials stiffened. "This is an internal matter," one protested. Daniel raised his wrist unit. "It stopped being internal when you tried to intimidate a registered complainant during an active review," he replied. "That's logged, in real time." The auditor's eyes widened. The officials stepped back. Lyra felt her knees weaken, but she stayed standing. Daniel turned to her. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." The incident spread across the station within hours, not through rumors but through official notices. Oversight alerts, audit confirmations, review extensions. The message was clear. Humans were not backing down. For the first time, other species began to speak. A trader from a reptilian world submitted an old complaint again. A miner from a low-gravity species reopened a case from years ago. A transport pilot quietly added testimony. Each time, humans responded, not with shouting, with patience, with records, with an understanding of systems that others underestimated. The pressure built like gravity. Lyra sat in Daniel's workspace one cycle later, holding a warm cup of human tea. She had learned humans drank it when thinking. "I didn't expect this," she said softly. "I only wanted them to stop." Daniel leaned back. "They will," he said, "and more." She looked at him. "Why?" she asked. "Why do humans care so much?" Daniel thought for a moment. "Because," he said slowly, "we learned what happens when people decide some voices don't matter." The council chamber filled to capacity for the first open hearing. Lyra stood at the center, smaller than everyone else, but no longer alone. Daniel stood behind her. The lead counselor spoke. "Lyra of the Cathari, do you confirm your complaint?" "Yes," she said. "Do you stand by your testimony?" "Yes." "Do you understand the consequences?" She took a breath. "Yes." Across the chamber, representatives of Sector 9 watched in silence. Evidence streamed across the walls. Logs, transfers, threat codes, patterns too clean to deny. The council chamber was quiet, too quiet. Then the lead counselor spoke again. "This hearing will continue." That was when the power failed. Emergency lights activated. Guards moved. Panic rippled. Daniel reacted instantly. "Stay behind me," he said. Lyra did. Security rushed in, but not from Sector 9. Neutral station guards responding to human-triggered failsafes. The attempt to disrupt the hearing failed. That failure changed everything. When power returned, the counselors looked shaken. "You attempted interference," the lead counselor said coldly, "during an open review." The Sector 9 representative said nothing. They didn't need to, the damage was done. Later, as the station returned to normal, Lyra stood by the window again. The stars looked different now. Closer, sharper. Daniel joined her. "It's not over," he said. She nodded. "I know," she replied, "but it's moving." He smiled faintly. "That's how change starts," he said. Far away, messages traveled across the galaxy. reports, warnings, lessons, and one sentence repeated in different languages on different worlds. If a human listens to you, you are no longer alone. And those who tried to silence a small alien girl were beginning to understand the cost of touching the wrong part of humanity. The station felt different after the failed interference. It was not loud or dramatic. No alarms rang anymore. No guards ran through the halls. Instead, there was a heavy silence, the kind that came after something important had already broken. Lyra noticed it first when she walked through the central ring. People looked at her openly now. Some nodded. Some looked relieved. Some looked afraid. She was no longer invisible. Daniel Harper stood in the human delegation office, reading the final compiled report. It was massive. Thousands of pages. Years of abuse hidden behind polite language and legal shadows. What had started with one complaint had turned into a full exposure. Human oversight had expanded the investigation beyond Sector 9. Once humans started looking, they never stopped at the surface. Patterns connected. Networks appeared. Names repeated. Daniel exhaled slowly. "This goes deeper than we thought," he said. A human legal officer nodded. "It always does." Across the station, the council chamber prepared for the final judgment session. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats. Observers packed the upper levels. No one wanted to miss this. Lyra stood waiting outside the chamber doors. Her hands were steady now. Fear still existed, but it no longer controlled her. Daniel approached. "You don't have to speak again," he said gently. "Your testimony is already on record." She looked up at him. "I want to," she replied. "They spoke over me before, they won't do it again." He nodded once. "That's your choice," he said, "and we'll back it." The chamber doors opened. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The Sector 9 representatives stood together, their confidence gone. They no longer argued. They no longer smiled. The lead counselor called the session to order. "Today," the counselor said, "we conclude the investigation into systematic abuse of authority within Sector 9 trade and security operations." Screens lit up around the chamber. Evidence flowed one final time, clear and undeniable. Confiscated cargo sold privately. Threat codes used repeatedly against weaker species. Complaints erased. Witnesses intimidated. And finally, the attempted interference during an open hearing. That had changed everything. The counselor turned to Lyra. "Lyra of the Cathari," the counselor said, "you may speak." She stepped forward. Her voice was calm. "I was taught to stay quiet," she said. "My people believe silence keeps us safe, but silence did not protect me. It only protected those who hurt us." She looked around the chamber. "I am not strong like many of you. I am not powerful. But I am alive and I matter." A soft murmur spread through the room. "I did not ask for revenge," she continued. "I asked for truth. Humans listened, others followed, that is all." She stepped back. The chamber was silent. Then the counselor spoke again. "Sector 9 Trade Authority is hereby dissolved," the counselor announced. "All assets frozen. All officials removed pending further action. Oversight will be restructured with multi-species enforcement." The words echoed. The representatives of Sector 9 did not protest. They knew better now. As the session ended, news spread faster than ships could travel. Other stations paused. Other councils watched recordings. Other authorities reviewed their own systems. Because if this could happen here, it could happen anywhere. And humans were watching. Lyra returned to her quarters later that cycle. For the first time since arriving at Karen Gate, she felt safe enough to sit by the window without fear. Her communicator chimed. A message request. She hesitated, then opened it. It was from a trader she had never met. "Thank you for speaking." Another followed. "We reopened our case. It worked." Another. They listened this time, her eyes filled with quiet tears. Daniel stood in the docking ring, watching a transport prepare for departure. Lyra would be leaving soon, returning to her people with restored cargo and official protection status. "You could stay," he said. She smiled. "I will," she replied. "Sometimes, but my people need to know what happened." He nodded. "They'll believe you." She looked thoughtful. "Maybe not at first," she said, "but they will see the results." The transport doors opened. Before boarding, she turned back to him. "They said a sentence during the hearing," she said. "One I didn't understand." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What sentence?" She repeated it carefully. "You messed with the wrong part of us." Daniel smiled faintly. "It means," he said, "you tried to break something we protect." She considered that. "Is it power?" she asked. "No," he replied, "it's fairness." She nodded slowly. The transport lifted away. Weeks passed. Car and gate stabilized. New oversight teams arrived. Mixed species patrols replaced old ones. Complaints were logged openly. Responses were mandatory. The station became quieter but stronger. Across the galaxy, humans earned a new reputation, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as listeners, as the species that took rules seriously when others used them as tools. Daniel returned to engineering, fixing relays and systems. Life went on. But he noticed something small and important. People spoke to him more. They asked questions. They trusted him, not because he was human, but because humans had proven something. Far away on a quiet Cathari world, Lyra stood before her people. She told them everything. About fear, about speaking, about humans who refused to look away. Some doubted, some listened, but change had already started. And somewhere in the vast, busy galaxy, a lesson settled into place, passed quietly from world to world. You can ignore humans, you can insult humans, you can even threaten humans. But if you try to silence the innocent, if you try to erase a voice just because it is small, then you have truly messed with the wrong part of them. And they will answer.